Nosferatu the undead, he who drinketh the blood of his victims and turns them as well into phantoms of the night. He is as a shadow and hath no reflection. At night he penetrates through walls and doors. In shape of a bat he wafts into the chambers of the sleeping. In shape of a black wolf he hunts down those who flee. Abandon all hope, ye whom he doth approach.
Welcome to Now Playing's Nosferatu retrospective series.
Makes men's bodies to quake and their teeth to chatter in their heads.
Hosted by Jacob.
This creature is a force more powerful than evil.
Arnie.
I love the darkness and the shadows, where I can be alone with my thoughts.
And Stuart.
We are scientists engaged in the creation of memory.
This episode will contain detailed plot spoilers and strong language.
At midnight, all sorts of evil spirits are set loose.
We hope you enjoy the show.
Tell me what you can from the beginning.
I'm ready.
Today we're discussing Nosferatu, starring The Crows, Bill Skarsgard, the Garfield movies, Nicholas Hoult, Kraven the Hunters, Aaron Taylor Johnson, Yoga Hosers, Lily Rose-Depp,
So mean.
Emma Corrin, and Willem Dafoe, directed by Robert Eggers.
You're not going to say Speed 2, Willem Dafoe?
Well, most of those movies came out this year, so they should all be happy there's Nosferatu, so nobody's going to be thinking about Kraven the Hunter, or the Garfield movie, or The Crow anymore.
Those are movies I am not thinking about, regardless of who's starring in this.
There was a Garfield movie this year?
I had no idea.
Wow.
He played John in it.
Damn, that really went under my radar.
It was animated, but he still voiced John. This is Arnie, co-host of Now Playing, and I am ready. I bid you, come to me.
And Stuart, but address me as my lord, as my blood demands.
And this is the co-host everyone comes to, Jacob.
So, Happy New Year, listeners. We are a few days later than usual with a weekend of release. However, it is a free Friday show as we do a twofer Nosferatu reviews this week.
Because there were two Nosferatus in 2024, which of course begs the question, why do we even need one? Why would anyone want a 100-year-old silent movie remade?
Because Robert Eggers wants it, and I think that's all he wants to do. I mean, after I saw The Witch, he's like, yeah, I'm doing Nosferatu next. This is what I want. And that was a long time ago and 2 other movies ago.
Yeah, Robert Eggers. I will return to our podcast review for folks that don't know. It is a patron pick, number 20 on our list of over 100 patron picks. Just did Barry Lyndon, and The Witch was number 20. And I declared on that show, Robert Eggers was the director to watch, that he was going to have an amazing career, and watch out, this is the beginnings of a major new cinematic voice. I don't know. What do you think about The Lighthouse and the Northman?
We all have our modern day working directors that we get excited about when a new movie comes from them. And Robert Eggers, despite whatever success he's had or not success he's had at the box office, is one who I look forward to. I love The Lighthouse. Hope we get to review that someday. That is just madness for a couple of hours with Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson. And The Northman, what a weird movie.
Yeah.
I remember the marketing for that. They're like, here's the next Braveheart. Here's this big epic. And I'm like, no, this is like this really dirty Viking saga, like naked dudes fighting in front of a volcano.
With lots of blurry images. Like, I feel like half the movie I couldn't even see.
Yeah, I went back and rewatched that one because the other ones I've seen multiple times. That one I had only seen once when it came out theatrically. And yeah, I really like Robert Eggers. He taps into, it's what made The Witch so great, is he gets into whatever time period he's making a movie about. And whatever you think about the plot, you feel like you're in that time period.
I'll agree with that. He is, I think, an art director and a graphic designer by trade. And his attention to detail is unsurpassed. You time travel. When you watch his films, The Witch particularly, you go back to a time before there was film. You forget that there is a crew there on set. You feel transported. I did like The Lighthouse. It was a mad little film. Felt almost like a play. But Northman, I don't know what I felt about that. I'll need to see it again. It did feel transportive, but it also felt punishing. It was really hard to endure. I do think that Eggers is very resistant to entertainment. He makes things not because he thinks audiences will like it, but because it's what he's compelled to make.
And I only had seen The Witch until a couple of weeks ago. I didn't recommend that film. I was pretty hard on that film. I did go back and revisit that film, and I think with revised expectations, I went in thinking that was a horror movie and heard it declared as a great new horror movie. There's some horror to it, there's some suspense to it, but I think my expectations for what that film was going to be sabotaged my ability to appreciate that film on the first watch. Rewatching it, I'd go back, I'd give that a recommend. I liked it quite a bit. I thought the performances were very strong, and there's definitely art in the filmmaking, and I think you were right, Stuart. I think Eggers was one to watch because people talk about him with almost the same reverency as they do a Nolan. People who like Eggers love fucking Eggers, And so I decided I'd get to The Lighthouse. I'd been meaning to see that for quite some time. Ever since it came out, it looked interesting to me. I watched that one. Yeah, I'd recommend it again. I didn't love it, but I liked it. The Northman, I didn't know if I'd have time to watch. I ended up just watching it in between two viewings of Nosferatu. It's my favorite Eggers film over Nosferatu.
Wow.
I think it has the most going on. I think Witch, Lighthouse, and Nosferatu all have periods where they really drag.
Yes.
I felt like The Northman really kept its pace up. I was surprised that I liked Alexander Skarsgård in it as much as I do. I pretty much only know him from True Blood and the remake of The Stand, and I thought he was a really solid actor in that. I thought Anya Taylor-Joy was good. I thought the story was familiar enough to drive home, very Shakespearean and such. I didn't think I'd like a period piece Viking film, and I really came around on that one. I went in reluctantly. Yeah, my favorite Eggers film. And then, I did see Nosferatu twice. I went on Christmas Day just for pure enjoyment reasons. I was highly anticipating this film. I thought the trailers looked really good. There was a lot of mystery around it. The marketing for this film has been incredible. Yes, of course, there's a gross popcorn bucket that's a casket with little rats in it.
With rats printed on the inside. Yeah, I had to check that one out, yes.
Really? Oh, you get rats with your popcorn. Okay, good. That seems appropriate.
But there's also this, 6,000-pound casket that they put in some theaters, one of which isn't all that far from me. I was going to take the 45-minute drive to see the casket. Turns out you can't get in the casket. It's too dangerous because the lid is too heavy. If you could get photos in the casket, because I saw some people, they snuck in. They got some selfies in the casket.
Of course.
If you were allowed in the casket, I was going to go see this casket.
You could just buy it. It's only $3,000.
No, it's $20,000.
That's the bed.
Oh, that's the bed.
The bed is $20,000.
There's a bed?
Yeah. You can have your bed be a coffin, or you could just buy a coffin if you think you're going to pass soon, or you know someone else that needs one for a mere $3,000.
I just had to bury a loved one. $3,000.
Yeah, that seems like a reasonable price.
It is a bargain if it is actually able to be buried in it.
Yeah, actually it is. Makes me think it's probably not a very good coffin, just look cool.
Even the band Kiss came out with a coffin that cost more than that.
Yes, I remember that.
Wow.
The weirdest promotion I saw, and I don't know how this is supposed to convince you to go see this movie, or maybe it's a little reward? I'm not sure, but I went to buy my tickets on the Fandango app, and you pick your seats, and usually the seats that are taken, they're different color square. I noticed all of a sudden they were little coffins. Those those were the taken seats? Like they came up with their own little icon? Again, I'm already buying the tickets. I don't need to be promoted to convince me to buy these, but I thought that was a weird little Easter egg when I bought these tickets. Or maybe it's a threat. Like you're going to end up in a coffin when you see them.
You know, and this is the weird thing, because to hear this kind of promotion makes you think William Castle were selling those cheesy horror movies from the 50s, silliness, campiness. And Robert Eggers
is not that.
Unless he's selling out, is the last person that I think would want a popcorn bucket. You know what I mean? Like, he is not...
I think it's out of his hands.
Yeah, he doesn't want to make popcorn entertainment. That's not what he's about. So he's, again, of another era. I feel like he exists in a pre-civilization time when there were no marketing campaigns. There were no movies. There was nothing but the chaos of nature.
He did say that he wasn't coming up with these ideas.
No.
But he did have veto power over these ideas, and he only let the ones he liked go through. So he is for this stuff.
He liked the design of the popcorn bucket.
He said he couldn't afford one of the beds, but
yeah,
he was for this stuff. And yeah, he is an interesting one because he's really into the period. He was fine with the marketing, but when he was asked in an interview I watched, would you ever make a modern film? His exact quote is, "The thought of filming a car makes me sick. The thought of filming a cell phone is just death." He does not want to make anything after World War II.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is an old-timey period piece. I don't know what the general public's knowledge of Nosferatu is, because they did not show, I think the most I saw of Skarsgard was his eyes in any promotional stuff, and I didn't want to go too deep because I figured, oh, his look is going to be a big deal, but I'm shocked when I go to buy my tickets Christmas Eve to see this on Christmas Day, and there's 3 theaters that are pretty close to me, and almost all of them are at least halfway sold out, packed theaters for this director who pissed off a lot of people with The Witch because it wasn't what they expected. This does not seem like a mainstream director. This does not seem like a mainstream movie, yet I was shocked with how many tickets were sold.
Yeah, I'm returning to that question. Why would you remake Nosferatu, not Dracula? I get that you'd bring back Dracula. Dracula is a name everybody knows. Nosferatu is something that half the people in the audience can't say. You're going to put that out at Christmas? It's a 100-year-old silent movie. Again, I get why Eggers would geek about it, but it doesn't feel commercial. It feels like a real risk to spend this much money promoting something that is not going to be, again, it's that elevated horror trick. Is there enough horror in it to entrance the common folk? Or are they just going to be bored and wondering why the movie's so slow?
The hype around this movie that I've seen is intense, and it is blowing away the box office expectations. They'd hoped for 25 million over Christmas weekend, Wednesday through Sunday. They've now upped that to over 40 million. I know I had trouble finding a showing that wasn't sold out. I usually go to the Alamo Draft House, and those pre-sold out so far in advance, it was crazy. So I went to a different one, a Flicks Brew House, if you've heard of those, and it was pretty empty when I bought my tickets. Packed on Christmas Day, 11:30 a.m. showing. I was almost the youngest person there. It was like the retirement home all went to see Nosferatu. Maybe they remembered the original coming out in the 20s. I mean, that's how old these people were.
They bought the caskets.
That's funny because I looked at my crowd and it was all ages. Like I had a line of teenagers sitting next to me that bought the rest of the row. So it was a real mix, which was a surprise to me because, yeah, who cares about this old silent film that I'm guessing a lot of them didn't even know if it was a vampire movie or not.
I'm curious if you guys know if you saw it in digital projection or 35 millimeter.
I'm sure it's digital.
Like Nolan, I heard that he was able to get in certain markets actual film to, like Oppenheimer did, run through a spool. They broke out the old projector.
I'm sure it was digital in both my showings.
Yeah.
But the thing that pissed me off at Flicks Brewhouse is they showed it in the wrong aspect ratio. Because I'm watching this movie and I'm like, I've just watched every Eggers film. I don't remember him framing shots where everyone's cut off at the forehead. Like just
oh, no.
The top of their head is missing in the frame. And I'm thinking this is a really weird framing choice. No, they fit the frame to the width of their screen and cut off the top and bottom. When I saw this a second time at Marcus, it was a much more square ratio, not as square as Lighthouse, but pretty square, and I got to see the tops of everyone's head.
Well, lo behold, the death of the projectionist. He died long ago. That used to be someone's job, that they had to very specifically calibrate the film projector and be ready for audience. Now that's done by the kid that's also filling the soda tank. So yes, mistakes do happen. But I will also point out, and it was something I noticed on my second viewing of this movie, the aspect ratio on this thing changes. The actual size of the screen image goes from rectangle to box, and sometimes other shapes as well. It's a subtle little trick.
Yeah, I did not notice that.
Oh yeah, it's really cool. Check it out. So maybe, again, if you don't get it exactly framed right, you're definitely going to cut out some of this image.
Did you get to see this in IMAX? Because I understood it was released in IMAX. All my IMAX screens are showing Mufasa, and that is it. I checked within a 75-mile radius, only Mufasa. If this was in IMAX, I think it's probably just the largest markets. And IMAX is known for having those aspect ratio changes. You know, Marvel movies and all the movies I see in IMAX do that all the time. I wondered if you saw this in IMAX and that was why the aspect ratio was changing.
No, actually, there's even a scene, I'll talk about it, where you can watch only on one side the black come in. So it sort of becomes a square as the scene moves unfold. It's a choice, but I do agree, probably some of it was shot for IMAX, which means that it's formatted like a square and not a rectangle. Some of that is just because they wanted to have the nice cameras on that. No, like you, they had all the Disney movies, Sonic, the movies that were expected to make a lot of money. Family films were the ones in the big screens. They put this in a very small theater. They put this in one of the smallest in my multiplex, but both times that I went, it was wall to wall. There were people there filling it up. So I think they miscalculated how much, at least initially, audiences might be ready for a gothic vampire movie on Christmas Day.
Yeah, my second showing was also sold out except for the front row. I kind of got the Christmas Day sellout. You know, first day it was out and everything, but I thought by Friday I'd be able to see a showing and have a lot of seats. Now, Alamo was doing a special event showing, so I couldn't get into that one. They were giving out the popcorn buckets with the expensive tickets. I did the party showing for Beetlejuice there. They have all kinds of things. They put I bet they put plastic rats out because they put plastic spiders out for Beetlejuice. But I went to the Marcus, and damn if that wasn't sold out. Now, yes, it was in a mid-sized theater, but there were people of all ages and things. Although I did notice some people walking out mid-film, and afterwards I overheard some chatter, like, what did you think? And the other one was like, yeah, I did not like that film.
Yeah, not surprisingly, this is elevated horror. It is not mainstream. I wouldn't have dared, if I were Focus Features, to say that this is our big Christmas gamble, that we're going to put it out so hot and heavy here. But what is the draw? I mean, is it Dracula? Do people know that it's the Dracula story? Are they just hungry for vampires again? Or is it Bill Skarsgard? Is it Nicholas Hoult? Johnny Depp's daughter? Who in this could even be the kind of person you put on the cover of People magazine?
I did hear people talk before this film came out about Nicholas Hoult's bulge in the film. Now, I didn't catch his bulge, but people were thirsting over Nicholas Hoult before this film came out. But no, I mean, none of these people carried other movies to glory this year. There's a reason why I pointed out their embarrassments of the year. Again, this movie may get them Oscar buzz and nobody's going to remember their flops of the year, but I don't see this as a star vehicle. But man, did they push this trailer. It was before every movie I saw in a long time.
Yeah.
And the trailer just looks creepy with that music box and seeing Lily Rose-Depp falling. I don't think she's a draw. I mean, literally Yoga Hosers and another Kevin Smith movie, Tusk, is all I've seen her in.
Yeah, but all right, be nice. She had an HBO show there, and it was terrible. I watched it, but she in the weekend.
I thought you said be nice.
Yeah, well, I mean, at least you can name something that people paid attention to. She was not the thing that people made fun of, but all summer long, people laughed about The Idol. She was Britney Spears in training, and The Weeknd was this this creepy Lothario that tried to sex up her image. And it was kind of a drama, kind of a musical, kind of a mess. It didn't partake of a career that I would have thought had much longevity. She looked like a starlet in passing, and knowing that she was Johnny Depp's kid, and nepotism, it's an easy label to throw on someone. Bill Skarsgård might be a reason to see this, right? People love his incarnation of Pennywise.
Yeah, if you think you're going to get Pennywise, maybe listen to our review before you go see this, because you are not going to get that.
But that would be the draw, right?
Yes.
And they did. That was the thing I have to say I was really most anticipating in seeing this, was how little of the vampire we had seen. You say Nosferatu, I always like Nosferatu movies better than Dracula, because Dracula always has to be sexy, right? Dracula is the one where we see him as the virile lover, and we're kind of seduced by him. But in Nosferatu movies, we see it as plague. We see it as monster. And Kinski and Max Schreck are two of the most terrifying vampires the screen has ever given us. I really wanted to know what Bill Skarsgård was going to do. They hype it up a lot, that when you were going to see him, you're going to be blown away.
And they kept him in shadow. They didn't show him on the trailer except a silhouette. I'm actually surprised. The trailer looked like it was showing a lot, but most of that trailer's in like the first 5 minutes of this film.
It's the pre-credits sequence, yeah.
Yeah. And I saw people on Twitter, like, I'm leaving Twitter because I can't see Nosferatu until next week and I don't want spoilers. And I'm literally like, this movie's 102 years old. What can be spoiled?
Spoiler! It's Dracula. It does everything that Dracula does.
They said the spoiler would be seeing what Skarsgård looked like or something. Mm-hmm. And I am going to say, seeing that mustache, that will become a meme, right? People are going to laugh at that stash.
I agree with that, though. Like, that was the one spoiler that I was kind of being careful about when I was looking up stuff pre-watching this film, is like, I don't want to see the design. I don't want to see them talking about how they're going to make him look. I think if you've seen that 100-plus-year-old movie, you're going to come into this with certain expectations. To me, the star of Nosferatu is Nosferatu. Like, how are you going to make this vampire look? That was my biggest anticipation.
Right. We all know this plot. We've covered it 4 times already. But Arnie, why don't you go ahead and give it to us, and we'll see what's different about Robert Eggers' Nosferatu.
Yeah, I am, again, using the same plot summary that I used for the 1922 version, but I did have to rewrite it a lot more than I had to for the 2023 Doug Jones version. I did have to add some inserts beyond just cast member names. But if you listen carefully, I think you'll see the echoes of my plot summary from a year ago. In her youth, Ellen sought companionship, calling out to any angel or demon who could fulfill her. Her call is answered by an ancient evil who ravishes her spiritually and to whom she pledges herself eternally. That being, we will discover, is Count Orlok. We then jump forward to the year 1838, and Ellen, played by Lily Rose Depp, is married to real estate agent Thomas Hutter, played by Nicholas Hoult. Thomas has been sent to Transylvania to meet a client named Count Orlok, played by Bill Skarsgard. Orlok wants to buy an estate in Hutter's town. Hutter goes, enticed by the thought of the big commission, and he ignores Orlok's strange appearance. Orlok makes Thomas sign strange papers in a language Thomas doesn't understand, but Thomas signs, again enticed by the commission Orlok is offering. Thomas doesn't realize he's signing away his marriage and giving Ellen to Orlok. Back home, Ellen has been having nightmarish visions that her husband is in danger and Orlok is coming for her. Ellen is staying with friends Frederick and Anna Harding, played by Aaron Taylor Johnson and Emma Corrin. Fearful of Ellen's night terrors, they call on Dr. Sievers, played by Ralph Ineson, who uses ether to sedate Ellen. But Sievers also suggests bringing in expert Professor Albin Eberhard von Franz, played by Willem Dafoe. Von Franz realizes that a dark spirit is torturing Ellen, and he eventually names that spirit Nosferatu. And he is, for Orlok is a vampire. Hutter finds the Count sleeping in his coffin. Hutter flees and falls into the water nearly dead. He's rescued by some nuns who nurse him back to health and beseech him to stay under their protection from Orlok. But Hutter knows Ellen is in danger, so he races back to Wisborg, Germany. Orlok has already departed for his new home in Germany, leaving Hutter behind. Aboard the ship, Orlok kills the entire crew and the captain. When he reaches Visborg, Hutter's boss Nock is waiting, played by Simon McBurney. A plague breaks out across Visborg, and Orlok goes to Ellen, but Ellen must pledge herself freely to the Count. She refuses, so he gives her 3 nights to do so. The first night, Orlok feeds on Anna. The second night, Orlok kills Anna and her 2 children. Von Franz, Friedrich, Dr. Sievers, and Thomas plot to kill Orlok by destroying his coffin, but Von Franz and Ellen both know the only way to really stop Orlok is for Ellen to give herself to him. On that third night, while Von Franz takes Thomas away under the guise of attacking Orlok, the Count goes to visit Ellen. She gives herself to him, body and soul. Orlok begins to feed on her blood, but while drinking from the young woman's breast, the sun rises, and Orlok is killed by its rays. The victory is not without a cost, though, as Ellen dies from her blood loss in the embrace of the vampire as credits roll.
As we start, I think they want to make an important distinction I don't think has ever been made before in either Dracula or Nosferatu. Ellen was in a relationship with the vampire before she was ever in a relationship with a human being.
Yeah, one of the things I did know going into this is I saw Eggers talk about what is his perspective going into Nosferatu. What is he going to bring to this tale that's been told a few times around as we reviewed and discussed. And his focus was Ellen. He's like, this is going to be her story, not Nosferatu's. And that gave me pause when I heard that before I saw this. I'm like, okay, so it's not all about this vampire, and it's not surprising knowing that going in. Like, yeah, this whole setup is about Ellen.
Not only that, but I mean, I'm really getting a sense of the witch as we get started here. In the same way that the witch ended with her pledging to a delicious life and a goat to be some kind of witch, some evil occultist thing, we see another woman in bedtime crying out into the dark, trying to make a connection. She has psychic ability, and not unlike the characters in the Insidious movies that reach into the further, sometimes they pull back a demon. That voice that answers is awoken by her. She brings this upon the world.
This is a really interesting opening to me. It's really Eggers' biggest contribution to the film is the reframing of the story from Ellen's point of view and making Ellen be the one to bring him into her life. In all of the Dracula stories, including the Nosferatus, it's been her husband who's been enticed by money, who's been making these deals with the devil and bringing in the evil. Here, we're going to get some words of a backstory that she's always been plagued by a little bit of madness and sleepwalking and night terrors, but I'm not quite sure why she is so lonely that she is calling out to just any angel or demon that will have her, but I really think this is a story of a sexually adventurous woman whose libido gets her in some trouble.
Oh no, that's totally my reading. And just like The Witch, about these puritanical societies and what are women's place in them. Yeah, I feel like this is about a woman who had some fun in her early days and now is getting slut-shamed, and that slut-shaming is going to destroy the whole town.
Yeah, I don't know that. I mean, I think she's a virgin in this moment, but I do think because she has desire, that is what brings out the nature, not unlike The Witch, which sort of existed in this pre-civilization America before it had a constitution and before it was really a country. We're in this Germany before there was Germany. We're going to get a subtitle, 1838 Germany. I know this much. I took a history of Germany class. Germany didn't exist in 1838. It was a series of principalities and didn't have a forged identity for another 40 years. And I think that there's something about that wildness, that undefinedness that Eggers really liked. Something on the cusp of civilization that's about to become modern, and yet it's ruled by these woods and these wilds and this folklore.
And yet it is the exact same year that 1922 film was set in. When I was revisiting my notes there, it is exacting in that way.
But that film did not say Germany. It said Wiesborg. And that's the difference, is that by calling it out incorrectly, that Germany was a country at this time, that's aspirational. This is a place that is aspiring for the modern.
And you say she's a virgin, but I definitely think we see her having sex with an invisible Count Orlok when she's sleepwalking there. She lays down on the grass or falls on the grass, and she's writhing and moaning and orgasming. And we see this with no one on top of her, but she is consummating her relationship with Orlok here in this past time.
Yes. If Orlok represents folklore, the past, nature, primal, the non-modern, then yes, that is what she is communing with, and that is forbidden in this time. I mean, again, this is the age of enlightenment. This is the time when science and reason is supposed to be explaining away superstition, and she's not giving it up. She's having full-on intercourse with mysticism.
We'll get to Willem Dafoe, but I think his character really drives that point home, that this may be modern times, but there's still things we don't understand about the past that we need to reconcile.
And we do get a very brief flash. It's really about 45 minutes until we get an extreme close-up of Bill Skarsgard. But if you have a quick eye, we do see what basically just looks like a charred zombie atop her for just a second, choking her out. He's into that kind of sex.
Yeah, I noticed he was choking her. That's when her moans of passion turn to screams, and she realizes this might not be what she bargained for. It's getting a little bit rough for her tastes.
It could just be 50 Shades of Nosferatu.
Yeah, I do think there's some of that. I don't know if back then they had a safe word or not. She wasn't saying it, but it does seem like she's made a bargain too far when she's woken up this demon who says that for centuries he's been in darkness, and her call awoken him.
Yeah, for whatever you want to put it, it is on her that this Wiesborg is going to have to deal with her. And we immediately jump. She's calling out to another lover, this time a human one. Her husband, Thomas, newly married, is getting ready for his big job. And this is usually how Nosferatu begin, with the husband off to work, cheery, unsuspecting of the darkness, while the wife is petting cats and lamenting dead flowers. But one thing I noticed that Eggers does, and I think it's really effective, in the second viewing it became really clear. Anytime we're in the modern day, there is always the sound or a visual of a clock. You will always hear ticking, or you will always see a clock in frame. Church bells are ringing. The modern world is ruled by this concept of time, whereas the natural world is eternal. It's infinity, I think, is how it gets explained. And that really is the contrast between the two worlds. This modern, precious little world that tries to be ruled by time and modernity.
And I think you see that when Thomas goes to work and all his coworkers are like, "You're 15 minutes late, how dare you?" And then Nock, who has been turned at this point, is like, who cares? Yeah, at least you're here.
Mm-hmm. Always giggling. You always hear laughter in this too. Like the ancient people are always giggling about something.
I'm going to say Nosferatu is a Christmas movie. It is set at Christmas. We're going to hear a music box playing "Oh Christmas Tree" later on. And here, I felt this way in Doug Jones' version, and here I feel it even more. I feel like we're seeing the opening of Scrooge being told from the point of view of Scrooge's put-upon employee with Nock as Scrooge. I mean, when you see all these people in top hats and everything, I definitely feel like we're in a dark version of A Christmas Carol.
Yeah, it's about roughly the same period. Obviously, Germany is not the same thing as England, but yes, I guess you could make the equivalence. I think it's Christmas because of Jesus Christ, right? Because of the sacrifice of some man. And here, this, by contrast, will be the story of a sacrifice of a woman. And again, this is an age that pretends to know so much about the world, and yet women are mysterious. Look at the writings of Freud. I do think that women do represent the unexplained, what the modern society cannot know. Husband is perfectly happy to go about his life. He believes that he can get money, improve his station, like we've seen the character before. And that means taking a job of going to Transylvania and giving some old guy a contract to buy a dump that's in town.
And I do like the detail that they've added that they are newlyweds, Thomas and Ellen. In the past, I think they've been celebrating their 1-year anniversary, but in this time before birth control, you would wonder why a couple wouldn't have children, especially such a libidinous couple as this. But we're going to get Knock saying, congratulations on your nuptial, a married man needs a higher salary, so secure this contract, secure your position with the company.
Yeah, this is a detail that's different. Usually they're living right by the place that the vampire buys, right? But they don't own a house. They're poor. We will find out that Thomas is actually in debt to a school chum and that he's just wanting. Again, this is maybe the gig. If I can do this, it requires me to travel for 6 weeks and be around some creep. But if I can do this, I can finally have what I aspired. And it puts him in contrast with his wife, who has had premonitions, a dream of marrying death, who receives his bouquet not as a gift of flowers, but as, why did you give me these dead flowers? I like they reused that line from the original Murnau movie. I feel like I recognize this movie, and yet the emphasis is such that it definitely has its own character, its own spin. It benefits by being Ellen-focused. We're with her when she knows her husband's going to leave her and go on this doomed voyage. She knows what we know.
And yet I feel like we've seen that before as well. She's always had premonitions that this was going to be a bad voyage. She's always beseeched him not to leave her. But here it's more emphasized.
Yeah, and again, he's like, don't talk about your dreams. Like, I don't want to hear about this wedding where everyone's dead in the wedding party and you're like never been happier to be holding hands with death. Just stop being weird, lady. I married you because you're cute, not because I like what's in your head. And that seems to be the tension of there. He's not really in love with her. She's just beautiful, right? That's what gets commented about her. She's a beautiful woman. She's the kind of wife that you marry that has a certain status. Just don't pay attention to that weird stuff she talks about sometimes, and that he's hoping she'll be silent. He'll pass her off to his friend, and this is where we realize that Aaron Taylor Johnson has a lot to giggle about now that he has escaped the role of Craven.
And he very much seems like that, as you described, like, oh, this foolish woman with her delusions, her seizures at night when she's sleeping. Like, yeah, he really doesn't want to put up with her.
Contempt, yeah. I would say actively dislikes her. She'll even call him on that at some point, like, why do you hate me? It's like, yeah, that's what it feels like. But he doesn't even talk to his wife. I mean, men talk with men, and they talk about manly things.
He's got 2 daughters, but he's excited about that son that's going to be born.
The son in the womb, little Frederick, is what I'm thinking about. And yes, he just happens to be the son of a shipping magnate. It's been handed to him. Success is easy for him to obtain. And now he's just happy to have status and thinks Thomas would be crazy not to go on this voyage and to get status as well.
But I do like, again, unlike that first film where Frederick and Anna are just introduced as Ellen's being dropped off, we do get a scene here. We get to see their little girls who are going to foreshadow their own death by saying there's a monster in our room, don't let him eat us.
There's a lot of that kind of stuff. Knock is like, oh, when you see Orlok, he's really old. He's got 1 foot in the grave.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of campy, but at the same time, I think it sets up this theme about children know about superstition. They believe in old world things, whereas Dad is like, there's no such thing as monsters. I'm a guy of science. I worry about how to ship things around. I don't worry about folk. How did Knock get changed? That's one mystery that I don't think any version has ever really explained. But Knock is crazy from the word jump. And I guess it just came through correspondence, that he just received letters from Orlok that made him crazy and want to get naked and start writing in his own blood.
I feel like the Doug Jones version actually explained that best when he gets that letter and the letters start to glow and it's like it's hypnotizing him, the strange writing on the page. Here, we don't know. You could see him doing some of this for money, but not biting the heads off pigeons and going as crazy as he goes.
I agree with you, Artie. I guess if you need an explicit reason for why Knock goes crazy, there's a reason to go watch that Doug Jones and Nosferatu. Still a not recommend for me, but there's a reason. But from what I take in this movie, what I could gather, and I'll especially get this when Hutter finally meets Orlok, is like Orlok, he kind of just says stuff and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm going to do that. You fall under that spell. And so my assumption is because Nock has been corresponding with him, he's already fallen under that spell.
It's that voice, right? That deep, deep voice. But I do think in the early versions, it was something we talked about. The part of the subtext, the fact that the first movie came out before Hitler came to rise, he was a Jew, right? And they do have, I want to point out, I see this man naked drawing I kept writing pentagram and then I counted.
No, it's 6 sides or something.
7. I counted 2. It was a 7-point star.
It's a heptagram, not a pentagram, which is associated with Kabbalah. So they are keeping the idea that this is a Jewish man, and you could have that anti-Semitic reading, that is why he's in cahoots with evil. Whatever the reason is, he definitely looks insane and inviting the evil in. And Ellen, as best she can prepare, wants her husband to remember her by cutting off a lock of her hair and putting it in his heart-shaped locket. Keep it close to you. I love that he keeps it close to he doesn't keep it to his heart. He doesn't wear it on a chain.
It's on his waist belt, yeah.
By his dick. Yes. Whatever it takes for you to think of me as you venture away. And we hear those church bells again. Always the sound of clocks.
And the journey to Orlok's castle is brief. I was surprised how fast the movie goes through this. It's a quick montage, and the next thing you know, he's in the village near the castle. There's all the townspeople dancing around him, and they're speaking a language he doesn't understand. Eggers did say one of his big influences while making this movie was an unexpected one. Mel Brooks' Dracula, Dead and Loving It.
Okay.
That should never be an influence.
He watched that movie for all the things not to do in a vampire film.
Okay, good.
For all the things that people make fun of. And one of them is apparently the townspeople, don't go there, it's cursed, and the guy going anyway. And here he's like, they're not speaking a language he understands. So he's not just ignoring them. He has no idea what they're saying.
Yeah, that we all know that cliched scene of guy walks into a bar, says, hey, I'm going to the castle, and everyone turns their head.
Yeah, goes silent and turns around to look at him. Yeah.
No, here they're just Romani. Basically, they're trying to rip him off. Their kids are swarming him, wanting him to do things. They probably want that cool-ass cap that he's wearing.
I was for sure they're picking his pockets there.
Yes. Some guys slap dancing while they do that folk music. And there's the leader. He's smoking a pipe and he just laughs. And it's creepy because it seems unmotivated, but it becomes contagious. Soon they're all just laughing at this guy for just being here. You ridiculous man. Now, do they know why he's there? Do they understand the context? Is this just projection on the part of a nervous realtor outside of his comfort zone? It's an eerie moment. And they don't do the book. Normally, I think in silent movies, it's always helpful to cut to, pages that you can read because there were intertitles. But here, he's brought into his room by an old lady who just gives him the crucifix. And instead of reading about vampires, he's going to see these Romani perform a ritual out in the woods.
Or is it a dream?
Yeah, this is a strange scene because he's following the Romani who go and say they've found the grave of a vampire, a Nosferatu, and they open the casket, stab it with a pickaxe, an iron item, and it coughs up blood. But then Hutter wakes up in bed. Was this a nightmare? His feet are muddy. So, this is kind of a cliche we've seen in a lot of movies where was it a dream or was I really out there? But in an Eggers movie that's this trippy, I go with it more.
I'm just confused why there's this naked Romani girl on a horse. I'm like, okay, they're going to send her into the woods and Nosferatu is going to feed on her. This is how they keep him from coming into the village. But yeah, they're going to open that casket and supposedly there's a vampire right there. I wasn't sure what the point of the sacrifice was because they don't sacrifice her.
And they even say she's a virgin, so
yeah.
You expect a virgin sacrifice out of that.
I think there is. I think the movie has just signaled the ending. here's a story about a man that believes the way to kill evil is to stake it through the heart. Very phallically, I'm going to grab my rod and kill it because I'm the man. And don't notice the virgin woman that's actually going to be the thing that stops, that we actually kill women in order to keep the evil at bay, is the truth. Now, these are Romani. Do any of these practices actually work? Did it even happen? It remains, as you say, just a trippy moment of uncertainty. But they definitely were around because they stole his horse. And now this poor guy, he has to keep walking. And I love, again, now that we're away from Wiesborg, no more ticking, no more sound at all. It gets more quiet and more quiet the further he ventures. And he eventually gets to this wooden bridge. There's this little temple of crucifixes. It's like the last opportunity to pray to Christ before you go into this area where Christianity has never touched. And it's so dark and quiet when he finally gets to that crossroads and sees the coach.
And I love you see that coach like coming right at you. There are crossroads, and then it goes to Thomas, and then it cuts back, and that coach is the wrong way. It's facing the perpendicular or whatever. It's not coming at him anymore. It's ready to take him, I guess, to the castle.
And he just floats inside. Again, almost against your will.
Yeah.
You end up doing things that your rational mind wouldn't let you do, but you have no control over your body.
And it's such a strange shot. I love the lighting. It's top lit. It's snowing. The way he just kind of hypnotically walks towards the carriage, its door opens slowly. One thing that really I noticed about this film is how often Eggers puts his subject directly in center frame, and there's so much around. There's just one person in the shot, they're in the dead middle, and there's a lot of landscape around them, and it's a really effective shot that drives home the solitude of the character. The character could be in a room with other people, but he's selling you the isolation spiritually of the character, and he kept going back to that shot, and it really caught my eye that usually you don't have 3/4 body shots like that outside of like a news report. You usually do more close-ups or you do 2 shots, and here he was isolating the characters a lot.
Yeah, the one character I don't notice in frame, and I'm looking because this is my most anticipated character in this film, is we always had Nosferatu like wrapped up. You could just see his eyes as he's driving that carriage. Like the angle, maybe there's someone in that carriage seat. I don't see anyone. I don't see hands holding the reins. I only saw this once. Maybe I missed it.
No, it's a ghost carriage. There's nothing there.
Okay.
Yeah, I was really looking the second time because we've seen it before. Dracula himself or Orlok himself is driving it, and he's got the mask on, making it appear like it's a servant. Here, there's no one in that carriage, and Nicholas Hoult's going to get in it anyway.
Yeah. Pulled into it. Again, the way he starts by stepping into it, and then he's just floating. And again, yes, they do have a lot of close-ups on someone's face. But what's unique, oftentimes the camera work in this is marvelous, but sometimes it will circle and swirl around, and suddenly you realize you're in a larger perspective than you thought. Like there's a close-up of Thomas's eye, and then all of a sudden we pull back and there's the door. I don't know how they racked focus this well, or maybe it's all computer process. But yes, as he's being driven against his will, really almost, to the castle, chased by wolves behind him, he's clutching his heart.
That is one of the things that stuck out to me, that there are these wolves we talked about in those silent films, and even with Bela Lugosi, like they have to look out the window and they're like, oh, did that man just turn into a dog? It's really corny. I'm glad the Doug Jones ones, they kind of just dropped that whole thing. I did wonder, Robert Eggers, he loves those original folktales. Will we see Dracula or Orlok turn into a dog? We don't see it, but he's always hanging out with wolves or hellhounds in this.
They do his bidding.
And when you're talking about some of these shots, Stuart, when the carriage is going up to the castle, that feels very surreal and almost like an old school matte painting. I'm assuming this is a CG shot. I know they did a lot of location scouting and a lot of location shooting. I think the Czech Republic, if I remember right. But that shot really was an incredible shot. Most of the camera work here is, I think, living up. If you're going to make a Nosferatu film, which, as Stuart has said, is teaching the grammar of film language and camera work, you're being ballsy to say, I can do that. And I think that Eggers, with his shots here, is living up to the legacy of a visually impressive film.
And yet, it doesn't feel corny the way that Coppola would sometimes over-dramatize, have trick shots. Coppola loved to do trick shots, and here the tricks are more seamless. I kid you not, when this door opens, he follows the shadow figure in and goes up some stairs. Watch the sides of the frames. They close in. The aspect ratio changes from rectangle to square. You don't notice it. Coppola would have it so that you'd never miss all the things that he was doing, whereas Eggers is working much more on a subconscious level. You could blink and almost miss what he's doing.
Yeah, and I don't think I noticed that because I'm looking for Orlok, and he's always so far back. I'll notice at the beginning, and I realize, I'm like, okay, this is not about Orlok because they are not giving us that close-up shot. It's at the beginning here, it's always long ways away, obfuscated. You can't see what the look is going to be.
You are late. I hear that Skarsgard trained with an opera singer, that the way that he got his voice so bass was to just like study music.
It does not sound like Skarsgård.
It really does not. I would not know that he was in this movie. When we finally see him, same feeling. I do not recognize Bill Skarsgard in that.
One of my critiques with Skarsgård's performance, or maybe this is on Eggers, there are times Orlok will speak in a different language and they give him subtitles. That's great because I don't know whatever Romani language he may be speaking, Transylvanian, whatever. I wish they always gave him subtitles because he is registered so low. It just sounds like a rumble a lot of the time to me. I had a hard time understanding it.
Apparently he's speaking ancient Dacian, which is a dead language, even more dead than Latin, I assume. But all the writing in this that looks like satanic symbols is a real language. All of this dialect is a real language. I saw a historian on Twitter who did like this 25 post thread about all the historical accuracy in the costumes and the hairstyles.
I would expect no less from Eggers.
Correct. That is his jam. That is why he made this. Let's just call it what it is. He didn't make this to scare you. And I don't think this movie is very scary. He made this to evoke a period and a time and something ancient. He wants to conjure. He is into the occult and alchemy in the same way that I feel like Osgood Perkin conjures the occult. I feel like he really is casting spells with the way that he's visualized. And maybe that is frightening, but it's not scary in the way that a jump scare, gory horror movie would be scary. It's ominous. It feels otherworldly. You feel like you're looking at something never photographed before.
And they're still going to tease you with the look of Count Orlok. They're going to do that for most of the film. And I feel like here we get little shots of him, but they're introducing him bit by bit, maybe a close-up of the eyes. Bill Skarsgard is great as this performance. I understand his voice. He took it down an octave, and there's very little digital enhancement. Now, thanks to Now Playing, there's an ADR recorder I've been talking to on Twitter, and there's always more than you know. They'll sell that the actor does the voice like Tom Hardy does the Venom voice, yeah, but they up the bass and they add the rumble and do some tonal shifting. But while I love his voice and his delivery, they went for a look with Orlok here with that mustache and the heavy cloaks and everything. Eggers really wanted it to look like a Transylvanian count from hundreds of years ago.
It looks like Vlad the Impaler if you look at those old paintings. He's got that mustache.
That is the shock, is that Max Schreck looked like a rat. He looked like vermin. The teeth. And Kinski mirrored that and even took it up a notch. And Kinski's so crazy, you believe he would kill you. I don't get fear off this performance. And I do think that it changes. I mean, this next section is really about the seduction of Tom. I do think that he's got an awesome bite. I think that his method here...
We're not biting necks.
Yes, going for the heart itself. There's a crunch and a slurp that's notable, but I don't fear this Nosferatu. I mean, even Doug Jones, I think, had a scarier look than this apparition.
And that makes me question why Thomas is so afraid all the time in his presence. Is it just his aura? But it's not his look. And yeah, I think this is the least impressive looking of all the Nosferatu, despite the fact that they've obviously put a lot of work into the makeup and it's a well done makeup job, but the overall result, neither sexy like Dracula nor scary like Murnau's original. It just is this neither fish nor fowl Nosferatu that I'm underwhelmed by.
Underwhelmed is a good word.
After I saw this film, one of my brothers texted me. He's like, hey, I'm going to go see this. Did you like it? And I'm not going to say if I liked it or not, withholding that to the end. But during the conversation, he's like, oh, should I go see that original silent film? He's never seen anything Nosferatu. I said, no, just go into this and let this set the expectations. Because, yeah, I feel like if you've seen this before and you're really waiting to see this Orlok, they're going with something different. This is not the main attraction like I thought it would be.
Agreed. And I think it is a disappointment of my experience. Certainly the first time, it sort of deflates the balloon a little bit. I feel like for the first 45 minutes, I'm really hooked into the magic, the black incantation magic of what's going on here. And the rest of the movie, I don't feel under its spell in quite the same way. But here in the beginning, I feel for Thomas, because you would too. You're in this scary castle, being handed this chalice, what looks like blood, being told that don't worry about those band of gypsies, that they just believe in morbid fairy tales. And I think this is an important quote. I can't wait to live in a city of modern mind that knows nothing of or believes in no such morbid fairy tales. Again, he preys upon the modern world because it doesn't believe in mysticism. That's the power and the hold that he has over you. As long as you deny its existence, if you believe in enlightenment, you don't believe in the monster in the dark. And thus you will be always the monster's victim.
And yet, Orlok was awoken by Ellen years ago. He's been in that castle. The Romani there are obviously hunting vampires and staking them while they sleep. Is Orlok fleeing them? Is he afraid that they'll get to him at some point? Or is it just his lust for Ellen that drives him? I'm left wondering a little bit.
I do think part of it is, like Stuart said, I want to get around these modern people that will not suspect anything of me. I'm sick of these Romani marching their virgins out into the woods and spoiling my fun.
Yeah, they have not modernized. These people understand me and they keep me trapped. The way I see it is I'm trapped in my castle because of them. I can't venture out too far because they kill my servants. They know my tricks. And I want to go to a place where it's Christian. And we have Ellen and Anna, they're walking on the beach. And Ellen's trying to explain her condition. Do you ever feel like you're under the power of someone, that you're being puppeted, that there's this darkness that grabs you? And Anna's just like, oh, that's just God. Just think about Christmas. The gentle breeze of heaven is, I think, her quote. She wants to keep framing things in terms of the way the Enlightenment framed it. Like, just believe in your Christian God and you won't have to worry about any of this voodoo stuff.
What's really troubling is they bring this doctor in, Ralph Ineson playing it, who is the father in The Witch. And there's this really disturbing moment where they're like, just give her more ether. And then he puts the cloth over her face so she passes out. That was just so troubling to me for some reason. The callousness of these doctors, just drug them up more.
Oh, and I love that it's like also make her sleep in her corset. It'll help with the blood flow and
the posture. Yes. Again, you see it. It's very clearly the Age of Enlightenment. For all that it claimed to know, it knew nothing of women, and it knew nothing of the natural state of women, their lusts, their sexuality. And to deny that is to deny the beast. They're playing into it by just saying, be quiet, woman, be in your corset, breathe this ether, don't moan in ecstasy when you think about what's in your loin. Yeah, that's definitely the conflict. Again, you could make the argument, like The Witch, that there is no real evil here. It's just female sexuality. It's just female's natural state that is so horrific to this Age of Enlightenment that they can't bear it. And that it ends up spreading some disease. I guess you could extract that as a metaphor for venereal disease. But Tom, he basically keeps getting bitten. I think he's a vampire, right? He wakes up with one bite and then he drops the mirror and there's rats at his feet. He gets the contract signed, and I really love the way that they filmed that. It feels feels like he's not selling real estate. He's selling his wife. At the same time that he's putting his signature on there, he's been handed this sack of coins and had the locket removed from his waist. It really feels like he just sold Ellen.
Yeah, that's the big moment is where Orlok sees Ellen and that, oh, let me see that. What a beautiful neck, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Here, he takes it, and I love that, like, Thomas will just be like, he never gave it back to me. He just
Yes.
kept that locket, which is very telling.
And he even smells it in there as like lilac, which again was how she described her dream of getting married, was that it smelled of lilac. That this guy knows his wife. He senses that. He knows that something bad has happened, which is why when he wakes up with a second bite, he's ready to do what the Romani did. I'm going to go find an axe. I'm going to go find this guy. I'm going to kill him. And this is where we finally get an extreme close-up. He finds the coffin. He rips off the lid. As the sunlight is fading, we get one very long shot of Bill Skarsgard. To me, it's Vlad the Impaler. It looks like a person, a human being. You know, before he can put the rod in him, Orlok stands up and we see his rod.
Yeah, he sleeps in the nude, but yes, he flees because the wolves are coming and steps on a ledge. In each telling of Nosferatu, the reason why Hutter doesn't make it home before Orlok is a little bit different. Here, he's gonna slip off a ledge, fall into the water, almost die.
But no, not before he's bitten. I mean, it's worth pointing out, before he goes out that window, he's in bed, lifted up, levitating, crunch in the chest. He is bitten 3 times. He is infected. By this point, by any standard, he would be a vampire.
But the other big difference I'm noticing, not that there's not enough atmosphere, this oozes with atmosphere, it's the Robert Eggers film, but one of the things, especially with that 1920s version, the original version, is just how spooky it is when Orlok's moving around this castle, coming through the doorway, the lighting, all that stuff is just masterful, and I'm like, okay, Eggers is gonna kill on this kind of stuff, and yeah, he kind of just passes it by. We'll see Orlok with a couple of wolves walking down the hall, but then Thomas just jumps out a window, and again, this is a readjustment. Okay, he's not going for those same kind of scares. If he's going for any in this, he's always very conceptual, I think, with his horror. But yeah, again, it's just a difference. Things that I was anticipating are not going to be in them.
Yeah, they still keep the motif that this is a man of shadows. That
Yes.
Largely when you see Orlok working, he'll hold out his fingers and you'll see those shadows cast on people. That's what makes them do. What we see Thomas do is he seals himself in his room, and then Orlok is at the window. His shadow falls on him, and Thomas just can't help himself. He stands up and he opens that door and he invites the dogs and Orlok into his bed. So again, it's the idea that the shadows will control you. But in order to get away from those wolves, yes, he ultimately runs on the ledge, falls out, washes ashore downstream, and is saved by nuns. I think the reason why he never grows fangs.
Yeah, why he doesn't change is that church treats him.
Yes, it is Mother Superior, whatever voodoo the Catholics have, they get the vampire out of him. And they know about Orlok. They even say something to the effect of that he is someone that has found a way to make his corpse walk around, and don't worry about him going home to get to your wife because he can't leave his soil. He is forever trapped in the soil in which he's buried, so you don't have to worry about Ellen. He's going to be stuck here. This whole adventure is really about how a vampire tricks the mythology to allow him to extend beyond the limitations of local folklore, right? How do I become an urban legend through the power of Thomas and through the power of Ellen? I think the movie is great when we're seeing all of this stuff, and I have to say I lose a lot of interest once Dr. Seavers and Willem Dafoe show up. I feel like there are just a lot of talking scenes that slow down the pace of this movie. They're less scary. I think they try to counterbalance it by showing the stuff on the boat, but that stuff is really done in very fleeting terms.
Yeah, you're not going to get that stiff as a board rising up from the grave on the boat. That is not in this.
The boat is just 3 scenes. We see the coffin loaded up. We see the captain go down and see an infected child dead and another man vomiting blood. And then after tossing a body overboard, he goes down there with the axe. And I like this moment because we can actually see Orlok's gross back slithering behind him before he turns and bites him on the neck this time. He doesn't always go for the chest. I guess if he doesn't love you, he doesn't go for your heart. He'll just go for the neck. But the boat stuff, I guess we had a whole movie of it. Maybe because of the last voyage of the Demeter, they backed away from playing up the boat.
I agree with you, Stuart. In all the tellings of Nosferatu, once Orlok leaves the castle and we deal with his journey and we deal with the racing against Hutter and we have the plague bit, I've always felt like the story just loses momentum. And here, yes, they've introduced a new character. There's always been a doctor who's been seeing to Ellen, who's always been having nightmares. But here, it does feel like, despite calling it Nosferatu, Eggers is looking very much at Dracula and decides we need a Von Helsing.
No, there was this character in the silent movie. There was always Sievers and the other one, and that was the professor. But Sievers, he's the rational one. He's the Age of Enlightenment. He's the doctor that's going to look at her and say she has too much blood, which sounds funny until you realize that makes her delicious. Like she's a big gulp just waiting to be downed by Orlok. But he keeps holding on to rational beliefs, but will eventually go and find the crazy guy that he took classes from in Zurich.
And I think this is what Willem Dafoe does in Robert Eggers movies now, just plays the crazy guy. Like, if you've seen The Lighthouse, if you've seen The Northman, just like, we need you to act insane. And I think Willem Dafoe does a very good job at that. And I get what you're saying. There's a lot of talking in the second half. Dafoe was my favorite thing in Beetlejuice. I like him when he's just acting over the top and crazy here. At first, I'm on guard because all your modern science tells you nothing. I'm like, oh, great, here we go. Science is actually evil. But I get his point here.
Yeah.
Oh, science is good, but we've overlooked a lot of things because we thought science would explain it all.
Right. He can straddle the difference. He can recognize that medicine explains so much, but that there is still this supernatural belief. Cult is real. And yeah, his diagnosis is, once he sees Ellen, he's like, stop giving her meds, stop, chloroforming her, and just let her rave, and determines that she's possessed by a demon. That's, for him, it makes sense. That's a diagnosis you can give. You are possessed by a demon. And she does do a little bit of Linda Blair. I have to say, there is some moments where she's rolling her eyes, and she doesn't quite say your mama sucks cocks in hell, but it's something like that as they're trying to circle her and figure out what is so wrong.
She does this levitation, back-cracking motion. I gotta say, maybe the visuals aren't the greatest thing about this, but I do like the sound effects. The crunching and sucking noises are so off-putting.
They want it to be realistic, so they never are going to put in supernatural CGI stuff. And it just means that a lot of it is performance. It's a lot of people, rolling their eyes back and saying things like, does evil come from within or from beyond?
Yeah, she definitely contorts in many ways that was effective. It keeps the mood, but yeah, I'm thinking of The Exorcist a lot during these scenes too, and they're trying to focus more on Ellen. She, again, all the tellings have had her have nightmares, but this is her nightmare that has caused the problem to begin with, so we're going to spend even more time analyzing it here.
I think what gets said is demons are attracted to people with dramatic lower animal function, aka she horny, right? That's the thing. Yes, because she's got a libido and we don't understand why women would have that. We're totally intimidated as men of science. We will not be able to explain this behavior.
I totally took it when she's writhing around in bed and moaning. I'm like, okay, she's just masturbating. She's just horny.
Totally. Very orgiastic sounds she's making as she's saying he is coming. And while she's saying he is coming, she's
coming.
No, yes. Well, yes. She may be literally coming. We also see that Knock is shown up in the hospital and making similar pronouncements. Knock's interesting. I like this little detail because when he's brought in, it said that he was ruining like a Christmas festival or something. He was running around eating goats raw, just like biting into them. And because this hospital used to be a prison, they have all the lower basement rooms are actually jail cells. I thought that was a cool device, thinking about where modern medicine came out of.
And Sievers is actually even upset that they would put a patient down there that's so uncivilized.
Right, exactly. This is the part again, if you think about the modern enlightened perspective, we don't look at the past and some of the quackery that we did in the past. Don't put our patients down in the jail cell. Well, this one deserves to be in the jail cell because he's biting the heads off pigeons. Full Ozzy, he's going. And he will eventually bite the guard, get away, and meet the boat as it's crashing into the dock. He will be the one. I think it's good. We always laughed at Orlok having to carry his own coffin.
Carrying his own grave.
Now he can have this knot guy row him to his new manor.
Can I say I'm disappointed in that, though? Because I really enjoy Orlok carrying that coffin. I find it funny, but I also find it endearing, and I think it's just one of the things a Nosferatu film should have. And Eggers is so focused on realism. How would he do it? Unfortunately, he's so focused on realism that Orlok will not be carrying his own coffin. Nock does it. But I really wanted to see Orlok carrying a coffin.
I kind of agree with you, Arnie, but I feel like Nock is always this weird character. You need him in the beginning of this story, and then they never really know what to do with him. He kind of runs around and causes havoc, and then he dies or just disappears from the film. Here, I feel like Eggers is trying to write him into the story, trying to make him relevant the whole way through.
Yeah, he actually says, let me go kill the broker. Because he's like, the broker is still alive. Thomas has finally made it home. He stole a horse from the nuns, and he comes riding back in, and he's convalescing in some bed, and presumably will get well. You should have killed him. I'll go kill him. Yeah, we see Nock actually on all fours. He has become the dog, right? Like he is now the dog to Orlok now that he's living here in Wiesborg. But Orlok makes something to the effect of, that's not the rules, right? I have to honor their wedding vow, and she has to break it. She has to be the one. You can't kill him. You have to have her willingly leave the marriage. Divorce has to be what happens. So yes, Nock can't go kill Thomas. He ends up not having much purpose for the rest of the movie.
No, and it definitely feels like a Renfield more so than Nock has in even other installments where he's begging Orlok for attention and Orlok's beating him down and he's eating the other animals. I just get a lot of Dracula off this. I get a lot of Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula off of this. When it comes to the styles, some of the score feels like it's hearkening back to that score from Coppola. I just feel like these two could be watched in a double feature and fit very well together. This feels like the most Dracula-y of the Nosferatu, even though the 79 one renamed Orlok as Dracula.
But within a very important distinction, and that is, I think Coppola gave us permission to laugh. When Gary Oldman is wearing kabuki hair and red robes and walking out stage right and then coming back in as a shadow stage left, there's something kind of giggle-inducing.
I'm with you, Artie. I am thinking about Coppola's Dracula a lot during this because of how different they are, not because they're similar to what you're saying, Stuart. There is something I appreciated about the campiness of that film, and I think that kind of comes through with that 1920s version of Nosferatu. How could you not have it be a bit campy when you have this guy with rabbit teeth running around biting necks? There is something to that, and I'm not that I would ever expect that with the Robert Eggers film, but I'm noticing I'm missing that. I kind of like that camp with this story.
There is humor here, but it all comes from Dafoe. It's Dafoe saying things like, I've seen things that would make Isaac Newton climb back into his mother's womb.
I love that line.
Yeah, like that's where we get the laughter. But we're not permitted to laugh at the visual. We're never given permission to think any of this is anything other than stark, nightmarish, horrifying. And after a while, to borrow a word from the characters, it becomes a little suffocating. It becomes a little much to endure.
Yeah, I think the main problem is length. The original was like barely 90 minutes, I think, and this is over 2 hours. They've added a half hour of extra stuff here, and I don't think it all pays off.
It all seems to be here in the end, too, with a lot of people debating in candlelight about what they should do about Ellen.
As for Dafoe, I do like how they make him stand out. Everybody seems to be dressed in just these all blacks, but they give him brown coats and everything. He just looks very different than everyone else. I also always thought of Dafoe as a very tall person.
He's the shortest one.
Yeah, I had to look it up. Most of these people are over 6 feet, and Dafoe is 5'9", which is shorter than I thought Dafoe was, but he always feels, the way this is framed, like everybody's towering over him in these shots.
Yeah, and in some ways that works with the metaphor of the fact that he doesn't have much standing. He was dismissed from his university, and he now kind of just lives on his own with his cats, and is just kind of crazy, and it's only because Sievers was desperate that he called him in here. there, but he's kind of proving his point. At the very least, Ellen is definitely going into another hyper state. He can poke her arm with needles and she doesn't feel it. And he seems to get her in ways that the men of science, and certainly Frederick, who becomes the focal character at this point, now that the ship has arrived and released all these rats. And there's now an actual plague, and he's arguing this is a real plague affecting real people. I'm not going to believe in demons. I'm not going to accept Defoe's theory, to his ultimate tragedy. Ellen, meanwhile, has recovered. As soon as her husband came home, maybe that was all she needed, right? She was a mess by herself, but now that she's in that relationship, she describes that relationship as saving her from madness. So maybe there is something to that, now that he's returned, even in his feeble state.
My reading is, here's a woman, she maybe did something that people looked down upon when she was a teenager. She had sex with a dude and is like become obsessed with this guy. And then whenever her husband's not around, she could just think about that good dicking she got so long ago. and when the husband comes back, she could calm down. Like, that's how this feels to me, though. Here's someone that, and I'm not blaming her, this isn't a slut-shaming thing, but here's a woman who had a sexual experience and wants to get back to that. Men do that all the time. So why can't she?
I don't know that she had a sexual experience, but her father did say she was sinful and cast her out.
Yeah, it came off very much like she had sex.
It may have just been masturbation.
Oh, come on. There's the scene later on when Frederick kicks them out because, honestly, they're house guests who have stayed too long, and first Ellen was sick, and then Thomas was sick. But when they get back to their own house, she gets on her knees and looks up at her husband and says, "You could never please me as he could."
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. And then he goes at her.
No. Yeah, metaphorically, she fucked the darkness. Absolutely.
I get that.
You're implying that if we don't look at a supernatural reading of this is just about a woman that was promiscuous in her early days. There's no evidence. I will tweak what you're saying slightly. She is able to act like a proper 19th century lady when her husband is around. And when her husband is not around, she's feral like her cat. She's wild and her natural sexual instincts kick in. And to many people, that looks demonic, sick, unhealthy.
Yeah, I'm not placing judgment on whatever kink she's in. I'm not passing judgment. I just think there is a reading. It's not my attitudes towards women. It's society's that we're looking at.
It's the point. Yeah, it's what Eggers is saying about the society, why they should be killed, why they will be wiped out. They do not understand women's sexuality. They demonize it and they are punished for it. But we finally get, I think this is the only time in any Dracula Nosferatu that I've seen it turn into this sort of 3-night deal. You know, Orlok comes to her, she opens the window, she's trying to sleep with Anna and a crucifix, but he appears in the room and basically says, "I'm just your thirst. You're the one that wants me." It's almost like a gaslighting, but he's like, "You're the one that wants me. I just thirst for you." And she insists she would rather have her husband. So he's going to give her 3 nights to change her mind before he kills Tom. And that feels new to me.
It is new. It's also the first time she's had called him, though. I mean, she'll always have to make the choice to give herself to him. That goes back to 1922, where she had to be a willing victim. But in the past ones, it was a willing victim who he would feed upon, not a willing lover who he would bed and consummate a relationship with. And I found it odd that she called to him, she woke him up, and now he's like, oh, but she has to agree again of her own free will. I mean, usually you make the bargain, especially in a horror movie, you make the devil's deal and you live with that result. But here she has to do it again or everyone around her is going to die.
There was no Thomas before. She cheated on Orlok. She got married with Thomas after committing to Orlok. So now that's what he was saying. I can't kill Thomas. I can't have Nock interfere with this. She has to divorce that relationship in order for this to be what we were.
But yet on that third night, he's going to kill Thomas, is what he said. I'm going to give you 3 nights and then I'm going to kill the one you love.
Yeah. And he is ill. We definitely see that he is looking as bad as she was a few days before. Bedridden, tootin', babbling. The nuns haven't fully taken the sickness out of him. And again, rats are scurrying through the streets, and as they're being sent home, you do see so many people burning their things, corpses and coffins being carried through the streets, street preachers talking revelations, fire and brimstone. It is starting to feel really apocalyptic here in this modern society. The hospitals are overrun. They're even talking about quarantining the whole city, and it's going to be a real COVID situation. And Frederick wants to get his wife and family out of there. Anna was found on night 1 bitten by rats and is now looking sick.
Yeah, he's going to break the quarantine he himself ordered. I found that to be a little bit amusing.
I mean, I lived in California. We know what Newsom did during quarantine. We know what Pelosi did, getting her hair did.
Can I just say, though, I appreciate that this film has really good performers in supporting roles. Aaron Taylor-Johnson as Frederick and Emma Corrin here as Anna, I think are giving really good performances. And now here Anna as she is sickly and fearful, and then just the deep sorrow of Frederick that we're getting coming up here. It pays to have good performers in small roles like this.
Here's the thing, though. Normally, you would want to have this being nightmarish. Rats are running through the city. It's horrifying. I'm so scared about the plague taking over everything. I'm kind of gleeful. Like, these were the shitty 1%ers that thought life wasn't going to hurt them, right? That, oh, there's no such thing as a monster in the closet. And so we're kind of glad when Orlok comes and takes those girls, right? There's some kind of perverse joy I take in proving to these people they were wrong to think they were protected with their little crucifix.
Yeah, and there's something about those girls. My wife clapped when they finally got eaten by Orlok.
Yeah, I hate to say that, but yes.
I did wonder, when I saw the trailer, I noticed them. I'm like, oh, are we doing a Shining thing with twins? But no, that's not where they go with these girls. But yeah, they're kind of annoying. And so
yes,
you're kind of glad when they finally go. That Orlok did us a favor.
It's an eat the rich feeling. It's like they deserve this for being so wealthy and privileged and unsuspecting that plague could hurt them.
I didn't have that reaction. I thought they were definitely going for horror and shock when Anna runs into the room and you see Orlok rip out the throat of one of the little girls with his teeth and spit out the blood.
Oh, they were going for it. Again, because this couple has been seen as so perfect, it felt like just desserts. That's what you get for not protecting your kids from the monster in the closet. Because this movie has sort of framed it that way, it's not horrifying to me, and it's actually a little boring how many scenes we get of Frederick crying in the mausoleum.
Yeah, Aaron Taylor-Johnson is great, but maybe it's because he's so great at doing this despicable character. I do not like this character. I'm not criticizing the way it's portrayed. I think this character's supposed to be unlikable.
I'm not sad for him. Again, it feels like this is what you get when you deny old world belief. If you live in the modern and you pay attention to the clock and you only care about money and you don't pay attention to the way the world really is, the way the natural world, if you don't pay attention to women, you're going to get this. This seems to be the rooster coming home.
And then again, I'm reminded of Dracula after the funeral for Anna and the children, and there's just something so morbid that they had those children's coffins at the ready. I feel like since this is only 3 nights, again, I just had a loved one pass away, and it took like 2 weeks to get on the burial schedule and all of that. Here, the very next day, they've got children's coffins lined up and ready to bury them.
It felt a little convenient. I agree. This whole 3-day thing is really compressing. Like, you're already having the funeral and they've been dead a couple of hours. Yeah, it is what it is. Again, they're trying to work by this convention that things are getting worse, that Ellen should be feeling the pressure, that something has to be done, and that it's for her to do. Because during all of this, Sievers finally showed his professor what Nock was doing in that basement cell. And he's like, why didn't you show me this before? This guy clearly is connected to the darkness. And they raid the estate agent's offices and find this codex, this book that's going to tell them how vampires truly are vanquished. And he knows, and Ellen knows, that it's only going to be her. It's the delusion of Thomas that he thinks he can go out there with a stake and win this fight.
And I think that works really well with the feminist themes that this is going with. The men think they're going to have this action scene that's going to save the day, and it's totally pointless and useless. It's not going to accomplish anything.
But that's where I'm saying I was thinking of Dracula, because that is exactly what happens in Dracula, is you get the four men who are together to go confront Dracula in his castle. That's the ending that is being set up here. And for people who hadn't seen the earlier Nosferatus or the Snickers ad that shows the ending of the 22 Nosferatu, you might think this is the ending we're getting. It's only Von Franz who knows the truth and takes Ellen aside and is like, I'll keep your husband away. I'm going to take him on this pointless mission. You know what you have to do. I'll just make sure you're not interrupted while doing it.
It's not totally pointless. They do stake Knock. He's the one that's sleeping in the crypt. When they finally get to this chapel that's covered in rats and rip the lid off the coffin, he stakes without looking, thinking, aha, I got him. And it's hard to hear what is being said here in the moment, but it almost seems like Knock comes to his senses. A little bit of regret. He talks about he should have been a master of rats, and he ends up maybe regretting his choice of his alignment.
I just took it as he was upset for dying because, yeah, he wanted to be that master of rats.
He does say that, like, he should have been master of rats, except Orlok only cared about his bride.
Right.
He's feeling spurned that Orlok didn't care about him enough. I don't think he necessarily regrets his choices so much as he feels like he wasn't appreciated enough.
And indeed he's not. Get out of here. You get to be the kill that Thomas can make. But the one that matters, the one that's the difference between the city plunged in plague and death and being saved by God's morning light, is Ellen, who has put on her bridal dress that she presumably wore for Thomas and is now standing at the window inviting the shadows. You know, we had that great scene they used in the trailer earlier when those Talon shadows fall against the whole cityscape and you can hear the screams of all the people in all the houses. Yeah, it really does feel like she's taking it all on here in the climax.
Oh, she's taking it all on, for sure. She is waiting with that dress, and you have to do it, right? If you're doing a Nosferatu film, you have to do the silhouette approaching the door at the climax. It's just an iconic image of the series, and Eggers does a pretty good job. I don't think this one's going to be remembered as well as Murnau's, but the hand, the shadow of the hand, he's done a lot with the silhouette of the hand. And here the shadow of the hand goes to the door, and it's the shadow that opens the door.
We didn't really go into depth about it, but the opening scene with Ellen, she's kind of levitating, and that drape is blowing in the wind, and every time it blows out, you see that shadow of Orlok, and even though there's no feet underneath it or anything. So yeah, he has continued that play with shadows that was so great about that original one.
And she makes the recommitment. She essentially spurns Thomas and commits to soul and then body. It's not enough just to say, I love you. You have to have the vampire crunch down on your tits and suck all night long.
Yeah, I don't know if he's just sucking. He's got no pants on at the end.
I felt like when he was feeding on Thomas, he was doing like this humping motion during it. So I assume that's what's going on here. And this is where he has taken off all his clothes for this one, and you see his rotted flesh. There's holes in it. He's not a sexy vampire by any means.
No, yeah, he's become monstrous in this moment. And again, just as the book foretold, the illustration showed that he would be distracted when the cock crows. The sunlight is streaming through the window. They don't have him vaporized. That was the classic way of demonstrating it. Here, he cries tears of blood. You know, she was so full of blood, and now he's giving it all back in the morning light.
Yeah, when they were talking about her blood, I noticed they talked about her menstruation, too, so
her very femaleness that is so exoticized and quite frankly intimidating to these men of science is the thing on Christmas, at a time when we celebrate a man for sacrificing his life to save all of us. It truly was the woman that did it. And Thomas and friends arrive too late. And then tell me this. We have Dafoe walking to the window, picking up the feral cat that represents the wild femininity, and it seems like it's forgiven us, we're saved, and yet if you look at his face in the mirror, I can't tell whether that's plague. You know, when you have plague, you have like spots under your eyes. He's got something under his eyes, but it could have been a silhouette from the window. It looked like a crucifix. Either way, it had a crucifix marking.
I thought for sure that was a crucifix shadow.
Is a shadow? It wasn't plague.
Yeah, I think it's a shadow from the window pane.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have plague. He's not denying a plague that he has.
I don't think so.
I didn't read it that way.
Okay, I wasn't sure. But the final image is from God himself, maybe, looking down heavenward on man and woman coiled together. It's quite a dramatic commingling before the credits roll.
Yeah, I thought it was a great image to pull back on with Orlok on top of her. It's haunting.
Mm-hmm. There is something kind of tender about it, strangely enough. Grotesque as it also is, there is something of love in it.
It looks like two lovers dead in bed, like you'd find in The Plague.
It does look like love of some kind.
So Jacob, Stewart, do you recommend Nosferatu? Jacob.
Most anticipated film of the year for me. I was very excited. I'm a huge Robert Eggers fan. I've talked about my love for Nosferatu. The first one I saw was the Werner Herzog one. And Klaus Kinski, as scary as he is, that film sold me on this gothic, longing, romance, love that the vampire pines for. It was an emotional experience when I watched that one. I'm like, I got to go back and watch that original silent film now. And I watched that and I'm like, wow, Max Schreck, what an amazing performance, the use of shadow. Even though this is such an old silent movie, there's something off-putting and scary about it, and I love that film as well. And so that's tough. This is a story that has had two cinematic expressions that I rank very highly, and this was one I was anticipating very highly, and maybe that's setting yourself up for disappointment. I was really anticipating Dune 2, though, and that exceeded expectations. And then I watched this one, and I'm like, oh, okay, that was a movie. And I talked to my brother about it because he's like, should I go see this? I'm like, yeah, it's good. I just don't have a lot of passion for it. And I do wonder if that's because there are two versions of this that I really do love. And this definitely tries to do something different. The point of view is not Orlok. It is not the vampire. It's not about scares. And there are uses of shadows and things that I would expect Eggers to execute perfectly. And he does. The camera work, the cinematography, all that stuff is amazing. But there is something about this story, maybe because it's just, it's longer. There's a lot more debates among humans going on. Like I said, I was thinking about Coppola's Dracula, and I'm like, yeah, that's probably not as masterful as this, but there's something about that one I even enjoyed more. The campiness, the humor, just the outrageous visuals. I think Eggers is always going to give you authentic visuals. Sometimes they might be outrageous, but he's more concerned about authenticity. And so there is an experience here, and maybe those who are not familiar with Nosferatu will get something more out of this. For me, it's a very good film. I just think there are better versions of this story that I've seen. This, again, it's going to try to do its own thing, focusing on Ellen, focusing on how society looked at women at the time, or maybe how they still look at them today. So this isn't a trash movie. It's a very good, well-constructed movie. It's one, like I said, I just don't have a lot of passion for because it didn't move me like other versions of this story had. So it's still a recommend. Again, I'd be interested to hear people that have no experience with Nosferatu, much like I experienced The Witch, where I had no expectations going in, and that is a film that turned me on to horror. I'm like, oh, horror could be more than goofy rubber masks to make a monster. That showed me something else, and I didn't have that experience. Maybe that's a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Again, I brought a lot of expectations into this, and so I just want to be clear because we could only come with our point of view, but I think it's a very well-constructed film, very well acted, a unique point of view. There's a lot of things to enjoy here. I just don't have a lot of passion for it, but it's still a recommend.
Stewart.
Yeah, I hear the disappointment in that review of like, it's clearly a well-made movie, but how do you feel about it? Well, here's one thing I feel about it. It's a very Robert Eggers Nosferatu. If that's what you want, he has done what he does. And in many ways, I feel like it is a virtual remake of The Witch. You can see how influential the Murnau movie must have been when he was telling that movie. But here's the difference. When I watch The Witch, I'm scared of that goat.
Yes, Black Phillip.
There's something primal about that goat. And when she pledges to that delicious life of evil with him, I feel the foreboding. And here, I don't. I think it's kind of what you're talking about, Jacob, of just there's not a whole lot of feeling in it, which is not to say that Eggers doesn't care. He clearly does in all the detail. I dare say you're going to see a better looking film this year. The attention to detail is astounding. Art direction, cinematography, sound design, all of these things are superlative. But the actual feeling it leaves you with, and I do think you're right, because we've seen this movie many times before, there's not a whole lot of room for them to find new territory. I think it comes down to Bill Skarsgard's Nosferatu leaves me a little cold. If I had more feeling about him, I'd probably be higher on this movie. I love Kinski. I love Max Schreck. And again, even Doug Jones had more menace in a few of his scenes. And certainly Willem Dafoe in Shadow of the Vampire was a wonderful version of Max Schreck and the vampire, Orlok. It just isn't a very good Orlok. In the end, it might be a very good Ellen, and it might be a very important message for our time, but it's not a particularly good Orlok. And so my feelings about it are muted. It's a good movie, dare I say, a beautiful looking, kind of amazing that we just covered Barry Lyndon. I think of it in the same way. It's a very painterly Nosferatu, but not the best Nosferatu out there. And I can only give it a decent recommend, a B, if we're grading it on a scale of grades.
And for me, I haven't been in love overly with any of the Nosferatus we've watched. I recognize the original for its important place in cinema history, but I feel like there are places where it drags and that it doesn't work as well being over 100 years old. It's a gorgeous looking film, but not one I love. I mean, I just rewatched it a couple weeks ago. There's things about it I worship, but there's also things about it I dislike. So I walked away kind of middling on it. The Murnau one I feel is overrated. It also did some things good, but I didn't care for it all that much. I think I've recommended it, but...
Stake in the heart, really. I still think it's the best vampire movie ever made, but okay.
Oh, God. When I rewatched that one a couple weeks ago, I'd forgotten just how slow and laborious that movie is. So it's honestly not hard for Eggers to make my favorite Nosferatu film. Sorry, Doug Jones, but it wouldn't be a huge swing to make my favorite Nosferatu. And Eggers did. Of all the Nosferatu, I think this is my favorite of the three because it has the most rich characters, it has the best subtext, it has gorgeous visuals that are different than Murnau's, but I think equally gorgeous. Not as groundbreaking because Eggers didn't do it first, and Eggers did it with a lot of trickery, digital or otherwise, that Murnau wouldn't have had access to.
And he didn't make it in the shadow of Hitler.
True. But yet, I also am just left a little bit cold on this. I was hoping it would be my favorite film of the year. I think it's great gothic horror. I don't think gothic horror is my genre overall. I think there's people who will absolutely love this, and its visuals are astounding. I wish I liked Skarsgård's Orlok more. I wish that drew me in more and that I could either be more seduced by him or more repulsed by him.
Both.
One or the other. I'm just kind of left in the middle and laughing at his Ted Levine mustache.
Agreed. It's on him. I put it on him. All the performances are good and Bill Skarsgård's good, but his interpretation is lacking.
I think he's good, but it's just not a Count Orlok that I think will last. He's never going to be the Count Orlok. There are cases where remakes have superseded their originals, like The Fly. Here, this is not going to be the Count Orlok for the ages. And it's not my favorite Eggers movie. I'll still say The Northman is my favorite Eggers movie. But I'm also not in love with any Eggers movie. Much like gothic horror, I feel like Eggers and I probably wouldn't vibe over drinks. We wouldn't have similar references. We wouldn't have similar tastes.
You don't know much about the 1800s, yeah.
And I do think that's really important. If you're sitting there saying, I didn't like The Witch, will I like this? No, you will not. You really do need to like what Eggers has done before in order to appreciate what's happening here on screen. It's the worst Nosferatu of the ones I recommend. I still think that Murnau, obviously, for lots of reasons, has the essential one. And maybe that's unfair, because it was the first one and made at a time when cinema was brand new, and he was pioneering so much. But I would put second on that Shadow of the Vampire, which, again, told the story of his making of that in a way that felt lyrical and moving. Again, I want to be emotionally moved when I watch the story. And the Herzog one, that one's just trippy. It's freaky and trippy, and all three of those are really strong films. I don't think this is a strong film. I think it's a painterly beautiful film, but I just think it's kind of middle of the road in terms of quality.
You brought up Barry Lyndon. Will this be more appreciated in 20, 30 years from now, perhaps?
It could be, but I think The Witch is just a much scarier film, primal film.
Yeah, much better film. I mean, to your point, my wife is like, and she did not like The Witch, but she's like, at least I had Black Phillip. She loved Black Phillip in that, and this was missing a Black Phillip.
Bill Skarsgård is no goat. It's true.
I say the best Nosferatu film is Shadow of the Vampire. So Dafoe, you're in my top two, both of them. But Shadow of the Vampire is just heads and tails a great film.
It is.
You know, when I said that none of the Nosferatus blew me away, I wasn't counting Shadow of the Vampire in that, but that film I can say I love, whereas the rest of them are good. I mean, other than the Doug Jones ones, I think I've recommended them all.
You could see any of them and enjoy it except for Doug Jones, which just didn't seem to have much point. I mean, even in reflecting on that, I just don't think that they had a clear idea about why they were doing it at all. At least the other ones have a reason for being, and they're all distinct. So I think they're all worth your time, except for, that Doug Jones.
And I'll just say, I agree, probably start with that silent film, even though, again, that and the Herzog one are almost companion pieces for me, because I saw them so close together, experienced them so close together, and they really have different focuses, but I think they both execute great on how they decide to focus on what they do. And then, Shadow of the Vampire is the third best Nosferatu, and then this, and I don't know, that Doug Jones one doesn't count.
Yeah, there's one to skip, and we all know what it is. It will be interesting to see how successful, if this movie has legs, if people keep going. I know it initially had good box office. Or will people feel cold and disappointed like we kind of are expressing? I don't know. We're done with Dracula. That's all I can say. I'm moving on to The Wolfman. We've got that new movie coming in a couple weeks.
I saw that trailer before this one.
Yep. And so that means this Tuesday, we need to get started on that leg of the Universal Monsters. And it means going back to 1941 Lon Chaney, The Wolfman.
Yep, we did Werewolf of London and the Werewolfless She-Wolf of London. But now we get to Wolfman proper with the Lon Chaney version. And next Friday, we're going to be bitten at the silver level donation too. As we go back, we did American Werewolf in London and American Werewolf in Paris. Now we're doing Teen Wolf.
80s style. This is the Michael J. Fox one. I think anyone under 30 thinks of Teen Wolf being something else, a TV show. But yes, when we were growing up, this is what being a werewolf meant. Michael J. Fox playing basketball with a body hair suit, just standing on his head on top of Van.
So that is available along with the American Werewolf films for just a donation of $10 or more. It's a new year. Hopefully you can look at supporting independent podcasting in this new year as we do, 3 Teen Wolf movies. If you are under 30 and you think of Tyler Posey as your Teen Wolf, we'll be getting to him in a couple of weeks too, because they made a movie out of that. They call it Teen Wolf, but he's 30-year-old wolf, so we'll have to see what that is.
Teen is a relative term. I'm still in my 20s by that definition.
So thank you for listening to Now Playing. We wish you all the best in this new year. And Jacob Stewart, thank you for joining me. Until next time, travel quickly, travel well into the land of the specters.
Time is an abyss, profound as 1,000 nights. Centuries come and go. To be unable to grow old is terrible. Death is not the worst. There are things more horrible than death. Can you imagine enduring centuries, experiencing each day the same futile things?
Thank you for listening to this Now Playing Podcast movie review.
Life is blood. Blood is life. Blood is life!
We hope you enjoyed the show.
They will no longer be able to say you would had to have been there, because the fact is, Albin, we were.
Help us spread the word about this show by leaving a 5-star review on Stitcher, Podbean, iTunes, or your podcast store of choice.
I have a task for you. Something I don't dare trust to anyone else.
Want more reviews like this one?
How long have you been listening?
In the archives section of NowPlayingPodcast.com, you'll find more than 1,000 in-depth movie reviews from our panel of hosts.
Hear my call. Come to me.
On our site, you can hear reviews for every installment in the world's biggest film franchises, including the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Star Wars, Spider-Man, Batman, X-Men, James Bond, Middle-earth, Jurassic Park, Fast and Furious, and Transformers.
It is like a dream, but I've never been so happy.
Plus, we have individual movie reviews, such as Titanic, E.T., Inception, Big Hero 6, Ready Player One, Pulp Fiction, Apocalypse Now, Dr. Strangelove, and hundreds more.
Yes. Let us talk until the sun shows its dreaded face once again.
And come back to NowPlayingPodcast.com next Tuesday for another all-new movie review podcast.
Listen, the children of the night make their music.
Support from listeners like you keeps Now Playing Podcast on the air.
Only you can redeem us.
You can donate directly by tapping the support button at NowPlayingPodcast.com.
Such is the price of genius.
And you can join our crowdfunding campaign for early access to new episodes, exclusive reviews, and bonus reviews.
I'm willing to pay you double the price.
Now Playing Podcast is produced by Arnie Carvalho.
The monster is here!
Associate produced by Jason Latham.
You could never please me as he could.
Now Playing is edited by Heath, Santiago, and Arnie.
I mean, I'm suffering for my art, Alvin, believe me.
Now Playing credits read by Brock.
I have to say this, even if you think it's foolish.
The opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual hosts and may not reflect the views of Venganza Media Incorporated.
I've never shared my secret with any soul.
Venganza Media Incorporated is not affiliated with, and this podcast has not been prepared, approved, or licensed by any entity that created the film analyzed herein. All movie clips and music included in this podcast are the intellectual property of their respective copyright holders. They are included here for the purpose of review, and no infringement is intended.
No lesser truth has ever been spoken. These are
Now Playing Podcast is an exclusive trademark of and may not be used without the express written permission of Venganza Media Incorporated.
Thank you. I think we have it.
Now Playing is a Venganza Media production, copyright 2025, and no part of this show may be reproduced, repurposed, or redistributed without the written permission of Venganza Media Incorporated. All rights reserved.
And excellent, Gustav. Extraordinary discipline in the face of ridicule.
Apparently, this prosthetic was gifted by Bill Skarsgard to Nicholas Hoult, who says he has it framed in his house. Kind of strange, but...
Of his prosthetic penis?
Yeah, the prosthetic penis. And it's not even his prosthetic penis. It's his co-star's prosthetic penis.
Now that is weird.
That is weird.
I mean, if you're Marky Mark, I could see having your Dirk Diggler on the wall because that was yours, but to have...
Yeah, the man that sucked from your chest? Well,
yeah, kind of odd. Aaron Taylor Johnson as Frederick, and who plays his wife?
Corrin. Emma Corrin, isn't it?
And Emma Corrin here as...
Anna.
Ellen and Anna. I kept getting confused because they're vowel names.
Mm-hmm.
Travel quickly, travel well into the land of the specters.
Almost 2 hours. Perfect.
Yeah. We had a bathroom break in the middle, though.
That's true.
Yeah, but it was short.
Nosferatu 05.
This is...
Where's my cursor? I can't get my cursor back. I can't hit stop. My cursor is somehow on my iPad, and I can't hit stop. I can't click anything.
That sucks.
I'm going to have to power off my iPad. I don't even understand why my mouse is
acting as your mouse pad?
It's like my cursor is on my iPad. It's like when I move my mouse, it moves on a little glowing dot on...
Can you use those as a second screen now?
You can with a certain application, and I think I have that application enabled, and that's why it's doing this. So will it give me my cursor back now? I literally can't stop recording. I can't do anything. I won't be able to end the call. There we go, finally.